Hello, and welcome to Time of Death. I'm your host, Dee.
And I'm your other host, Ris.
Ris, do you want to do your spiel or do you want me to do my spiel?
What's your spiel?
Imagine.
No.
Picture.
Slow down.
You're in a
Slow down, tiger.
What? Tiger?
Hello,
Tigress.
all the tigers out there. Tigresses, tigers, whatever you are. We are a true crime podcast, and we are a true crime nursing podcast, to be more specific. And we like to talk about cases that have a heavy medical influence to them, or cases that feature a medical professional as a perpetrator or a victim. So buckle up.
Grab a snack,
a big T-bone steak if you're a tiger. If you're not a vegetarian.
I have no word. I don't know what to say.
And settle in.
So, picture it. You're checking into a beautiful, luxurious health retreat. You're there to cleanse your body, rejuvenate the spirit, and leave feeling brand spanking new. Except you never leave.
That's not the ending I would prefer.
You messed me up because I was not alive anyway. It threw me off.
My bad.
It's okay. No, this is not the plot of some cheesy horror movie. No. This was real. And at the very center of this is a woman named Linda Hazzard, which I thought was so appropriate. Hazardous. So this is actually, before we get into this is actually a listener request that I thought was really, really cool. I just want to give her a shout out. House of Wolves. Lucifer.
Oh my god.
I know.
House of Wolves.
I was like, that's so cute. I don't know which name they go by, but I thought that the little username was so freaking cute. I was like, how often do we talk about wolves on this podcast?
We love wolves here.
So anyways, I just want to give them a shout out and thank you because this case was really interesting. And, if there is anything that you guys want to hear, please send it to us. We are more than happy to investigate and do the episode regarding that case.
And we love requests.
I think they're so cute. It's such like a nice little dopamine hit when we see the message. So we love you guys and thank you.
Thank you for being the reason for our neurotransmitters to fire.
They only go off a couple times. So Linda Hazzard called herself a doctor, and she convinced people that she was acting in their best interest. How she got people on the path of wellness, however, was through starvation. And by the time that authorities actually caught on to what was going on, at least 15 people had passed away at the hands of Lizard. I knew I was going to do that. I said, don't do it, Dee. Don't do it. Lizard.
Linda the lizard.
I have that bad habit of mushing words together, and I said lizard. But regardless, yes, this number was actually believed to be much, much higher. However, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that people's lives were lost. They wasted away under Linda's care. And I use the air quotes for care. Losing not only their health, but oftentimes their entire fortunes and inheritance. And somehow, despite everything, she almost got away with it. So Linda Burfield Hazzard was born on December 18, 1867 in Carver, Minnesota. She was the eldest of 7 kids to her parents, Susanna Neal, she was formerly Wakefield, and Montgomery Burfield. So there's not a ton of information about her early life. It was said that she was a very sickly child. It's really the extent of the information that I found. But it is very well known that she did not possess any type of like formal medical education. So no medical degree.
Okay.
So she wasn't a real doctor.
Okay.
However, she was licensed to practice medicine in Washington state because of a loophole, which allowed practitioners of alternative medicine to obtain licenses without traditional qualifications. So therefore, she was known as Dr. Buzzard.
Buzzard?
Buzzard.
Thought it was Hazzard.
I have it written here, Dr. Buzzard. I wrote the wrong thing. Oh my god.
The lizard, the buzzard. What kind of animal is she?
Oh, I literally have Dr. Buzzard written in my notes.
That's wild, though, that Minnesota, right?
Washington.
Because it's wild to me that they let her practice.
Just buckle up. It gets much
Wow.
worse. Much, much worse. So we talked about how she was practicing alternative medicine and she was a doctor of alternative medicine. So her alternative medicine MO was fasting as a therapeutic method or cure. A belief that was actually influenced by her studies under actual Dr. Edward Hooker Dewey, who was a staunch advocate of fasting therapy. Dr. Edward Hooker Dewey earned his medical degree from University of Michigan and was an American physician who, again, promoted fasting as a cure for a ton of diseases. He believed that excessive eating caused illness and advocating that his patients skip breakfast, and went on to detail his theories in books like The No Breakfast Plan and Fasting Cure, both of which were published in the early 1900s. Linda was very much influenced by his work and truly believed that food was the source of disease and illness, and that prolonged fasting would allow the body to really purge itself of toxins from food. This, again, this is a very extreme belief, right? Like we talked about very briefly, she was very sickly as a child. And at some point, she very likely could have internalized the idea that restricting food made her feel better. And it doesn't really specify what kind of sickness she suffered with. So, that's could be some kind of relationship that she established at a very young age. And on a more sinister note, she also saw the power in fasting, not only for health, but as a means to leverage against or over people. And I think this is a very important distinction. And just before we get into the nitty gritty, she was not a misguided healer. She was a narcissist. Mm-hmm. She was someone that was delusional, almost like a grandiosity where she alone has this ability to heal people utilizing fasting. She was the only one who could really cure people. And people were supposed to do exactly what she said, no questions asked. And if they died, well, not my problem. It's theirs. They were too far gone, or they didn't follow the protocol, or whatever excuse she wanted to, confabulate. Again, this is almost like a delusional, and if you're wondering what delusions are fixed false beliefs in psychiatry.
Can you give us examples?
So, if I were to say, Ris.
Yes.
I was abducted by aliens at age 15, and I have been communicating with them for years and years, and I have a diary journaling all of our communications, and I have been chosen by the aliens to be their ambassador for planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good example of a delusion.
So it's something like that you truly believe in.
Truly believe. But delusions persist despite the risk coming to me and saying, Dee, there's no diary. I was with you on these days. I have never seen you abducted by aliens. You have not been abducted by aliens because X, Y, and Z, I have proof. And a lot of times, delusions are a symptom of various psychiatric disorders, whether that might be schizophrenia, delusional disorder, mood disorders with some psychotic features. And there's a lot of different types of delusions. They can be categorized. So persecutory, grandiose, erotomanic, somatic, bizarre. These are all different types. I think this would be more of like a grandiose.
So you're saying Linda had like grandiose delusions.
Yeah. I think she thought that she was like the gatekeeper for this really wonderful curative treatment for people. But like we briefly talked earlier, she also used this as a way to really exert power over other people as well, which is where it gets very nefarious.
But you think she like honestly thought?
We'll get into that more, but absolutely. I think she really, truly believed this.
Okay.
So in 1908, Linda and her husband Samuel opened a retreat called Wilderness Heights in Olalla, Washington. Patients, a lot of them very wealthy, were put on an extreme fasting regimen. Example of this might be small amounts of tomato or asparagus broth as a meal, 1 orange per day if they were lucky, intense enemas that would last for several hours,
Oh, jeez.
and massages that would oftentimes leave bruises. A lot of these patients went on to lose more than 50% of their body weight.
Oh my goodness.
So really one word sums this up quite nicely, and that word is control. Linda was creating an environment, again, of total control. When patients were really too weak to resist her, she would then manipulate them into signing over their possessions, their money, their inheritance if they were entitled to anything. She wasn't just treating them. She was isolating them and making them very dependent and pliable. So this is also really important to recognize that this is like a hallmark sign, a very clear pattern of what serial killers do. Like this grooming, control, and then a very slow, painful death at the hands of someone that oftentimes they trusted. And who did they trust more than Linda to cure them? Local newspapers went on to call the retreat Starvation Heights. So some bad press after multiple patients just disappeared. Despite the deaths, Linda again blamed her patients, saying their illnesses had been too advanced for fasting to cure them. However, this all came to a head when 2 wealthy sisters, Claire and Dorothea Williamson, read Linda's book, Fasting for the Cure of Disease, that's the title, and traveled to Washington for treatment in 1911. They checked into the Seattle hotel and started immediately the fasting regimen and began rapidly losing weight. Eventually, Linda went on to move them to Wilderness Heights, even further isolating them. So Claire was dead within months. She weighed under 50 pounds at that point. Under 50, 50. And even after her death, Linda wasn't done. She had forged documents to make herself the sole beneficiary of the shared inheritance between the 2 sisters. And this is where it really rears its ugly head what Linda's true nature was. This wasn't just alternative medicine gone wrong. This was a cold-blooded con. She wasn't killing by accident. She, again, was choosing her victims very carefully. The wealthy.
So I'm just confused. If she had these delusions where she truly thought that starving her patients was going to fix them, but she also had ulterior motives and she was conning them at the same time, I just don't understand.
Both things are true.
Okay.
In my opinion. Both things are true. If you're delusional, that doesn't mean that there's not some kind of ulterior benefit.
Okay. Because if it were me and I don't know, because I don't think I have any active delusions. Maybe I do. I don't know. But either way. So if I feel like if I were trying to treat someone and I fully believed that, I'm going to try this starvation method because I truly believe it works, I feel like I would be discouraged when it didn't work. And also I would I would be more likely to pick people who I think have a better chance of coming out.
When you have
intact.
when you have a delusion, it persists even when there is evidence to the contrary. So the fact that people were dying did not faze Linda because in her mind she would always be able to justify their death.
I see. Okay.
Another victim, Earl Edward Erdman, who was a civil engineer, kept a journal of his slow decline under Linda's care until his death. During his time under her care, his journal basically chronicled what the severe fasting regimen looked like. His entries were a first-hand account of the drastic and fatal methods that Linda used. And on March 28th, 1910, he died of starvation at Seattle General Hospital. This diary later went on to become a critical piece of evidence highlighting the dangers of Linda's methods. Another victim, Leonard Ritter, who was a businessman, wrote to his family saying he was too weak to leave before he disappeared. Maud Whitney died of fasting-induced organ failure, weighing only 60 pounds at the time of her death. Dorothea, Claire's sister, one of the two sisters we talked about, her childhood nurse, Margaret Conaway, became suspicious after not hearing from the girls and found Dorothea skeletal and near death. Her intervening was Linda's downfall. After she found Dorothea, an investigation began that uncovered that Linda had forged Claire's will that we talked about. In 1912, Linda was charged with manslaughter for Claire's death. And at this point, trial goes on. Witnesses say that, they were abused, robbed, and starved. Family members make that accusation against Linda. And she was sentenced to just 2 years in prison at this point, which is crazy to me. 2 years.
Oh my God.
For
That's
15
horrible.
deaths. And they say, oh, well, the reason that she got off so lightly was that she was in a time period where women were not in the medical field. And she almost was a martyr at that time and a pioneer rather than a murderer. After her 2-year stint in prison, she moved to New Zealand before eventually returning to Washington. The 1920s, she opened yet another fasting clinic without a license. And in 1938, she fell ill herself and tried to cure herself through fasting.
Okay.
And that is why it's a delusion.
Okay, I see.
And she ended up dying of starvation.
Wow.
So even at the end, as she's wasting away, she refused. She did not have the capability to admit that she was wrong. She did not have that insight. In the end, her own method killed her.
Yeah.
But unlike her victims, she made that choice, whereas they did not.
Yeah.
And again, Linda's delusions were rooted in the unwavering belief that starvation was the key to wellness. This is how you cure disease. And again, she was a visionary. She was a healer. She was the ultimate healer. In that, again, that's where the grandiosity comes in. And she refused. And I would even say that she could not even acknowledge that she was wrong. Didn't matter watching patients die under her care. And she would just turn it around and say, well, they had an underlying condition. It's not my problem. And that is where the personality disorder really comes out. To me, her behavior strongly suggests like a narcissistic personality disorder and maybe some antisocial traits as well. It's just this lack of empathy, very manipulative. Again, the grandiosity can play into that as well. And just complete disregard for ethics at that point.
And also, this is a time, like you pointed out, women were, newly allowed to be in medicine. And it's I think her taking that pathway of going to Washington to practice alternatively just shows like they weren't really allowed in medicine, but also there's still, in my opinion, there needs to be, you need a medical degree, you need schooling before you can practice.
Well, there was no oversight, like you said. There's no oversight. She exploited a loophole, and she was able to feed this need that she had to be superior to other people in her mind.
Yeah.
But, she's just almost like a cult.
Yeah, it sounds culty.
Very definitely strong cult vibes. And, I just think it's so ironic. It's actually the ultimate irony that she ended up passing away from her own practices.
Well, it just goes to show, because at the first when you were talking and you're like, oh, it's a delusion. And like, I was just confused. Like I verbalized how you could, have this delusion, see it not working, but also be benefiting from their death. It seemed more to me like just like she was conning them into believing to do this so that they would die and she would benefit as a result. Mm-hmm. But now that I know that, and now I know that she died as a result of starvation, it clicked for me because I didn't really get all the connections. And now I'm like, oh no, she genuinely believed that starving these people would cure them.
Mm-hmm. But she had no qualms about capitalizing on the fact that they were not improving. In fact, they were dying because of her treatment. And I think that in lies the difference. That's where this complete disregard for human life, this lack of empathy, no ethics, that's where I think it rears its really ugly head. We're just reading about her. Obviously, we never met her. So it's hard. But like you said, it is very cloudy at that point because is there a secondary gain that's motivating this versus her own internal beliefs? But I think her dying, like you said, makes it crystal clear.
Yeah.
She truly freaking believed this. I don't know if she did it actively, but when she got sick, she did it. And Ris, you did a great job bringing up actually one of my final thoughts. What was that? Why were alternative medicine practices so unregulated in the 1900s? Mm-hmm. When you think about it, it's really not all that long ago. And, exploiting loopholes, I think that's still something that goes on today. But, it's a really good point in that there needs to be oversight in everyone practicing.
It seems like for some people, especially women during this time, I feel like maybe they thought that was their only option to get into medicine is through this loophole. But at the same time, it's not going about it the right way, in my opinion.
I think that's an excellent point, though. It was almost like a stepping point for a lot of women who had been really shunned from that.
So in 1849, the first woman graduated from an American medical school. It was Elizabeth Blackwell. She graduated in 1849. So yeah, I don't know. It seemed like, to me, it struck me as maybe it was just a way for some people who thought that they couldn't go the traditional route to get into medicine. But either way, thank you for that information about the delusional beliefs, because I think you clarified it a little bit for me and maybe some of the listeners too. But
Before we get into that, I also want to recognize that there's still echoes of this today in diet culture as well. Anyways, on that note, I just want to thank again House of Wolves, Lucifer. I hope I'm saying that right. But House of Wolves just completely made my whole night when I saw that. Our house is of wolves. Right?
you have your wolves on your game. That's true.
We're not sponsored by them, but Wolf Quest is out and I am playing and I love it.
Everyone download House of Wolves, and House of Wolves sponsor us.
House of Wolves or Wolf Quest?
Oh, sorry.
Wolf Quest.
Wolf Quest.
We
Sponsor
love
us,
you,
Wolf Quest.
Please, someone. You know how many times I see Bloom on the TV and I'm like, wow, everybody is sponsoring Bloom. Bloom.
Bloom, sponsor us.
Sponsors Bloom. I'll drink it. But on that note, Ris, any thoughts?
No, great job, Dee. I really enjoyed that case. I've heard of this case before.
You have?
Yeah. And I heard it a few years ago. Well, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. Back when I was, getting into true crime podcasts.
Whoa.
And this was a nice refresher because I haven't listened to anything about her in a while. And thank you, House of Wolves, for this recommendation. I really enjoyed listening, and good job with your presentation. As always.
Thank you, Ris. On that note, I hope everyone has a good night. Good night.
All right, everyone. We'll see you here next week. Thank you so much for listening. The time is 21:05.
Wow.
That's 9:05 for those of you who do not use military time.
It's because we got ice cream.
It's because we got ice cream. We just needed to get some ice cream tonight.
Yes.
All right. Bye.
Bye, guys. See you next week. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.